The first light of dawn always belonged to Ayanna. Each morning, before her brothers stirred and before her father's stern voice carried through the lodge, she would slip out quietly, wrapped in a deerskin shawl, to greet the horizon. The sky above the plains stretched endlessly, shifting from deep indigo to a pale blush of pink, like the slow breathing of the earth itself. Ayanna's breath lingered in the cool air, and with it, a prayer whispered in Lakota, "Let me walk gently today. Let me not be in the way." She was 19 winters old, but in her father's eyes, she had never grown beyond a child who could not meet his expectations. He valued strength measured in the hunt, in the endurance of long rides, in the ability to fight, to provide, to lift the weight of survival. Her brothers had all inherited his broad shoulders and quick temper, and though they stumbled often, he praised them for their attempts. Ayanna, however, was different. Her hands were slender, skilled at beadwork and mending. Her voice soft, better suited for songs than for shouts. Her body tired easily from carrying firewood or water, and more than once she had dropped bundles too heavy for her frame. For these failings, her father carried words sharper than any blade. "You are nothing but a burden," he told her once, when she spilled water from the clay vessel she was carrying. "A mouth that eats, but hands that give nothing back." The words had lodged inside her like a stone, heavy and unmovable. The Lodge of Shadows, their family's lodge, was well made, buffalo hides stretched over sturdy poles, painted with symbols of her father's hunts. To the outside world, it was a place of pride. But for Ayanna, the inside often felt small and heavy with silence. Her mother had died when Ayanna was only 12, and with her passing, so too went the only shield between father and daughter. Her mother had understood Ayanna's quiet spirit, often reminding her that gentleness was not weakness, that tending a wound required more courage than wielding a spear. But without her, Ayanna was unprotected. Her brothers teased her relentlessly. "You cannot even carry wood for the fire," one would say, tossing a stick at her feet. "Perhaps the wind should carry you instead," they laughed, though sometimes not cruelly, not understanding how deep their words cut. It was her father's voice, though, that wounded most. His gaze was hard, lined with disappointment, and though Ayanna longed for even the smallest sign of approval, she found only judgment. Ayanna's quiet strength, what no one noticed, or perhaps what no one cared to see, was the strength Ayanna carried in different ways. She was the one who stayed with the elders when their knees could no longer carry them far from the fire. She listened to their stories, memorizing every detail, every name, as though weaving their lives into her own. She tended to the children when the mothers worked, cradling them, telling them tales of stars and rivers. When someone fell ill, it was Ayanna who sat beside them, singing softly until their fever broke or until the Great Spirit called them away. But such tasks were quiet, unseen and unvalued compared to the thunder of horses and the pride of a successful hunt. At times, she wondered if the spirits had made a mistake with her, that perhaps she had been meant to be born to another lodge, to a family that might have seen her heart as something precious. Yet here she remained, bound by blood to a man who did not see her, who looked past her as if she were smoke on the wind. The winter of harsh words, the winter that year, was cruel. Snow fell early and heavy, cloaking the plains in silence. The men grew restless, their hunting trips longer, their tempers sharper when they returned empty-handed. Hunger gnawed at the village, and every small misstep became an excuse for anger. One evening, as Ayanna knelt to tend the fire, her father returned, shoulders dusted with snow, his face carved with exhaustion. He dropped his spear against the lodge wall and glared at her. "Why is the fire so weak?" he demanded. "I kept it burning all day," Ayanna replied quietly. "The wood is damp. It does not take flame easily." Her explanation only deepened his scowl. "Excuses," he muttered. He turned to his sons. "And you, at least you try. You go out, you fight the cold, you face the hunt. But her, she sits here, feeding smoke instead of flame. A mouth to feed, nothing more. The words stung more than the bite of winter air. Ayanna lowered her eyes to the fire, blinking against tears. She wanted to speak, to remind him of the countless nights she had watched over his mother when illness kept her from sleep, or the time she had mended his moccasins when no one else had cared to. But her voice failed her. The whisper she kept to herself later. Alone, Ayanna pressed her hands to her heart, whispering to herself the words she longed to hear from him. You are not a burden. You are a flame. Small, but steady. Without you, the lodge would be cold. It was the only way she survived, the act of reminding herself of her worth, even if no one else acknowledged it. She whispered these affirmations the way one might whisper prayers to the spirits, hoping that if she said them enough, they would someday take root and grow stronger than her father's scorn. Glimpses of hope. Despite everything, moments of hope still found her. Once, while gathering water at the frozen river, she caught sight of a hawk circling overhead. The elders said hawks were messengers, sharp-eyed and unyielding. She watched it for a long time, the way it glided with such ease, and felt as if it carried a message just for her. Lift your eyes. You are not bound to the earth as tightly as you think. Another time, a child she often cared for ran into her arms and said, Ayanna, you are like the sun. When you smile, I feel warm. These small moments kept her from breaking entirely. They were tiny embers glowing in her heart, enough to keep her alive in a world that insisted she was less than she was. The weight of being unwanted yet. No matter how much she tried to hold on to those embers, her father's voice always returned, louder, heavier. You are in the way. You will never make a man proud. You should have been born a son. Each word was a stone added to the weight she carried. She moved through life bent beneath it, walking softly so as not to draw attention, trying to make herself small, invisible, so she would not give him another reason to call her what she feared she truly was, a burden. But deep inside, beneath the wounds and the silence, something remained unbroken. Ayanna did not yet know it, but her spirit had a strength that no harsh word could destroy. It was the kind of strength that lay hidden until the right moment, until someone with eyes clear enough to see it would call it forth, and though she could not imagine it yet, her life was on the edge of change, the kind that begins quietly, like a hawk's shadow passing across the snow, unnoticed at first but carrying with it the weight of destiny. The spring thaw came like a sigh after months of silence. Snow melted into rivulets that ran through the village paths, carrying away the weight of winter. Children's laughter returned, chasing each other in the mud, while the men began to prepare for the season's first great gathering. It was a time of renewal, of trade, of dances beneath the wide open sky. For Ayanna, it was also a time of dread. These gatherings brought many eyes that judged, eyes that measured worth. She had no father's praise to shield her, no mother's proud smile to anchor her. She would stand among the people as she always had, present but unseen. Or were seen only through the sharp tongue of her father. The gathering on the morning of the gathering, the village buzzed with movement. Women sewed new beadwork into moccasins and dresses, their hands quick as sparrows. Men painted their faces, braided their hair, and sharpened weapons that gleamed in the sun. The great circle was raised, a wide space where dances would be held, where chiefs and warriors would speak, where promises of alliance and trade would echo. Ayanna stayed near the edge of the commotion, braiding the hair of her little cousin. She worked quietly, humming a song her mother had once sung. Around her, voices rose and fell like waves, but she remained a stone at the water's edge, content to let the tide move around her dot. It was then that she noticed him. First glimpsed Lakota. He entered the village with a small group of warriors. their horses decorated with feathers that fluttered with pride. The people greeted them with respect, for these were men who had faced many battles and returned with honor. Lakota himself carried no loudness, no need to boast. His presence was enough. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his hair dark as raven wings and bound with strips of leather. His eyes were the color of storm clouds before rain, steady, sharp, yet carrying something deeper than ferocity. He walked not as one seeking to impress, but as one who belonged wherever his feet touched the earth. Ayanna lowered her gaze quickly, embarrassed to be caught staring. But curiosity tugged at her, and once or twice more she glanced in his direction. She saw how he greeted the elders first, bowing his head in respect, how he knelt to listen to the laughter of children, how his hands, though capable of wielding weapons, were gentle when he placed a fallen feather into a girl's braids. Something stirred in her chest, something she had not felt before. A father's harshness, but as always, her father's shadow loomed. He stood tall among the men, boasting of hunts, recounting battles of his youth. When Ayanna approached to deliver fresh water, he dismissed her with a flick of his hand. "Go," he muttered. "You are in the way." Others heard. She felt the heat rise in her cheeks, her humiliation sharper than any winter wind. Her father's words, casual to him, were arrows to her. Lakota was near enough to hear as well. His gaze flickered toward her just for a moment, but in that moment, Ayanna saw something startling. Not pity, not mockery. Understanding. It unsettled her more than cruelty ever could. The smallest things that evening. When the drums began to beat and the dances filled the circle, Ayanna lingered at the edge. She carried water for the dancers, fetched blankets for the elders, moved silently in the background as she always did. She thought herself invisible, but Lakota's eyes found her again and again. He watched as she soothed a crying child, rocking him until his tears stilled. He saw how she adjusted the fire when smoke threatened to sting the elder's eyes. He noticed the way her presence steadied the small things others overlooked. To Lakota, these were not small things at all. The warrior's memory later, as he sat with his fellow warriors, Lakota spoke little. The others boasted of hunts and plans for the summer, but his mind lingered elsewhere. He remembered his own mother, who had been frail of body but unbreakable in spirit. She had not hunted, nor fought, nor carried burdens across long miles, yet without her, their lodge would have collapsed. It was she who had taught him that strength was not always loud, that the greatest warriors were often carried not by their own might, but by the steady love of someone who believed in them. And in Ayanna, quiet and overlooked, he recognized that same strength. A subtle encounter the next day. As Ayanna gathered kindling outside the circle, Lakota approached. His shadow stretched across her hands, and she looked up in surprise. "You choose the driest wood," he said, his voice calm, almost soft. She blinked, unsure if he was mocking her. "It burns more easily," she murmured, eyes lowering. "A small fire can warm many if tended well," Lakota replied. Ayanna's hand stilled. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not of her fire tending, not of her quiet labor. She could not find words to answer. Lakota simply inclined his head and moved on, leaving her with a heart that beat far too quickly. Ripples in the circle that evening. Ayanna's father grew boastful once again. Surrounded by men, he spoke of his sons, of their courage, their worth. Then, perhaps to draw laughter, he gestured toward Ayanna, who knelt nearby. "And this one," he said loudly, "what does she offer?" "Nothing. She is a burden. If not for her mother, I would have given her to another lodge long ago." Laughter rose from some, though others shifted uncomfortably. Ayanna froze, her cheeks burning, her heart a stone in her chest. The ground beneath her seemed to tilt, but one man did not laugh. Lakota's gaze locked on her father, steady, unflinching. His lips pressed into a thin line, his storm-gray eyes darkening. He said nothing, for now, but his silence was heavier than words. Ayana's heart that night, Ayana could not sleep. She replayed the moment again and again, her father's voice echoing. Yet alongside it was something new, the memory of Dakota's voice, low and gentle, speaking of fire that warms many. For the first time in her life, the thought came to her unbidden. Perhaps I am not what my father says I am. Perhaps there is more to me than burden. It was a dangerous hope, fragile as a new blossom in early spring. But even fragile blossoms can survive if the sun finds them. The storm approaches. The gathering would last several more days, and though Ayana did not know it yet, the current of her life was already shifting. Dakota had seen her, truly seen her, and once such sight is given, it cannot be taken back. Her father's voice would rise again, cruel as ever. But another voice now lingered in the air, waiting, patient as the coming rain. A voice that would one day whisper the words that would change everything. Then she belongs with me forever. The sun rose high on the third day of the gathering, turning the plains into a shimmering sea of gold. Drums echoed across the circle, steady as a heartbeat. Songs rose in layers, the voices of men and women weaving together, strong enough to reach the spirits above. Children darted in and out of the gathering place, their laughter like the chatter of sparrows. It was a day meant for joy. For Ayana. It was a day of knots in her stomach. Her father had been drinking heavily since morning, sharing bowls of fermented corn with other men. His words grew louder as the drink flowed. His chest puffed with pride as he spoke of his sons, his hunts, his youth. Ayana knew what always followed boasts sharpened into blades, and she was the easiest target to cut. She tried to remain out of sight, tending to the elders, carrying fresh water to those seated in the circle. Yet no matter how quietly she moved, her father's eyes found her. The humiliation as the afternoon wore on, a contest of strength was called. Young men raced their horses across the plains, others tested their aim with bows, and laughter filled the air. Ayana lingered at the edge, clapping softly for each success. Her father, standing among the warriors, caught sight of her and called out suddenly, his voice carrying across the gathering. "There!" he shouted, pointing. "See my daughter? What use is she?" Heads turned. The laughter hushed. Ayana froze, her water vessel trembling in her hands. "She cannot ride like her brothers," he continued, his tone half jeering, half bitter. "She cannot carry the weight of a buffalo hide. She cannot even keep a fire burning without smoke choking us. What is she then? A burden, a mouth to feed. Nothing more." The words struck like thunder, echoing in the silence that followed. Some men chuckled nervously, others shifted in discomfort. The elders frowned, but none spoke against him. Ayana's throat tightened. Her eyes burned with shame. She lowered her gaze, wishing she could melt into the earth itself, vanish before all those eyes that now saw her not as invisible, but as worthless. The warrior steps forward, then into the silence another voice rose. Calm, steady, yet sharp as flint. Your tongue is quick to cut, but your eyes are blind. It was Dakota. The crowd stirred. Warriors turned, surprised to hear him speak with such boldness against another man. Ayana's head lifted slightly, her breath caught in her chest. Dakota stepped into the circle, his shadow long against the ground, his storm-gray eyes fixed on her father, unflinching. "You call her a burden," he said, his voice carrying to every ear. "Yet I have watched her. I have seen her hand soothe the old, her voice calm the young, her care keep the fire alive when the wood is poor. You see weakness. I see strength quiet but unyielding." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Her father's face flushed with anger. "You dare speak against me in front of my people?" Dakota did not waver. He turned slightly, his voice lowering, yet every syllable was clear. "Then if she is a burden to you, she belongs with me forever." The whisper that shook the circle, the words were not shouted. They were not boastful. They were whispered, but the whisper carried like the beating of wings. Ayanna felt them strike her heart, soft and terrible all at once. Forever. Her breath caught. Her knees weakened. She had never heard anyone claim her, never heard anyone say she was worth keeping, not even for a moment, much less forever. The crowd reacted in waves. Some gasped, others murmured in approval, still others bristled at the challenge. The elders exchanged glances, weighing the weight of what had just been spoken. Her father roared, his voice like a storm breaking. "She is mine to call what I wish. Who are you to take her word against mine?" Dakota's jaw tightened, but his gaze remained steady. "I am a man who knows her worth, and I will not let your voice be the only one she hears." Ayanna's silence, all eyes turned to her then. Ayanna stood frozen, the water vessel slipping from her hands and shattering at her feet. Water seeped into the earth, darkening the soil. She wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but her voice trembled in her throat, tangled between fear and disbelief. Never before had anyone stood between her and her father's cruelty. Never before had anyone seen her, defended her, claimed her. Her father's glare turned on her, sharp as an arrow. "Do you defy me too?" he demanded. Ayanna's lips parted, but no sound came. The world seemed to blur at the edges, the circle spinning around her. Only Dakota's voice remained steady, like a drumbeat cutting through the noise. "She is not yours to break," he said firmly. "She is her own. And if you throw her aside, then I will carry what you cast away. Not for a day, not for a season, forever." The breaking point, the circle erupted. Some shouted in support, others in protest. Ayanna's father surged forward, his hands balled into fists, fury burning in his eyes. But the elders stepped between them, raising their voices for peace. "This is not the place for blood," one declared. "The spirits watch. Let no anger dishonor this gathering." Her father spat on the ground, his chest heaving, but he did not strike. His pride was wounded, his authority challenged, yet even he knew the weight of the gathering was greater than his rage. He turned away, muttering curses, but the damage was done. His words had been answered, his cruelty exposed, and Ayanna, though her body still trembled, though her voice still failed, felt something shift within her. A thread snapping, a weight loosening. For the first time, she had seen that her father's words were not unshakable truths. Someone else had seen her differently. Someone else had called her something other than burden. Nightfall that night, the village buzzed with whispers. Some said Dakota had been reckless. Others said he had been brave. Some pitied Ayanna, others envied her. She sat alone by the fire, her shawl wrapped tightly around her. The stars above glittered cold and endless, but for once she did not feel so small beneath them. She replayed his words again and again. "Then she belongs with me forever." They frightened her. They thrilled her. They confused her. They lit a warmth inside her she had never known, a warmth that spread through her chest, her throat, her very breath. When Dakota passed by later, he did not speak. He only glanced at her, a quiet look, steady as before. She lowered her eyes quickly, but her heart raced. The world she had always known was shifting. She could feel it. The breaking point had come not only in her father's voice, but within her own heart, the dawn of something new. She did not yet know what would follow. Would her father cast her out? Would Dakota truly take her in? Was she brave enough to step into a life she had never imagined for herself? Questions swirled like smoke. But one thing was certain. The whisper had been spoken, and it could not be taken back. Ayanna was no longer only her father's daughter. She had been seen, defended, claimed not as a burden, but as someone worth forever, and forever is a word that cannot be forgotten. The night after the breaking point was restless. The fire in Ihana's lodge burned low, its embers pulsing faintly, but she could not sleep. Her father lay snoring, his breath heavy with drink, her brothers scattered in dreams of hunts and glory. Only she lay awake, her mind chasing itself in circles. Then she belongs with me forever. The words echoed again and again, as though whispered not just once but carried on the wind, woven into the stars, stamped into her very heartbeat. That no one had ever spoken of her with such certainty. No one had ever called her anything other than burden, weak, or useless. Yet Lakota, whose name alone carried weight, whose presence bent the attention of men and women alike, had spoken of her not as if she were less, but as if she were more. And he had said forever. Ayana's fear, but what did forever mean? She sat up slowly, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Her father's shadow loomed even in his sleep, his words chains wrapped around her chest. What if Lakota had spoken only out of defiance, a momentary rebellion against her father? What if he did not truly mean it? If she believed in him, if she hoped for more, and then the hope broke, what would she be left with? Her heart warred with itself. A fragile part of her longed to believe, to cling to that whisper like a lifeline. Yet another part whispered caution. Do not trust too easily. Do not open a wound that cannot be closed. She pressed her palms to her face, torn between fear and yearning. The morning after, when dawn came, the village was alive again. Smoke rose from cooking fires, the scent of meat mixing with the cool breeze. The drums were silent, replaced by the chatter of women trading goods and the laughter of children running between lodges. Ayana moved quietly through the bustle, carrying water for the elders. Her father had woken already, his temper sharp from the night before, but he had spoken no word to her. His silence was heavy, dangerous, like the air before a storm. She kept her head low, hoping to pass unnoticed. Yet everywhere she went, whispers followed. Women glanced at her from the corners of their eyes. Men murmured to one another. Children, unguarded by custom, pointed and said aloud what others only thought. That is the girl the warrior claimed. Heat rose to Ayana's cheeks. She wanted to vanish, to slip into the tall grasses and hide. But another part of her, a part she barely recognized, felt a flicker of something else. Not shame, not entirely, almost. Pride. Lakota's approach later. That day, as she returned from the river with a vessel of water balanced carefully against her hip, she saw him. Lakota stood alone near the edge of the circle, speaking quietly with an elder. His hair gleamed dark in the sunlight, his frame still as stone yet alive with quiet strength. He glanced up as she passed, and their eyes met. Ayana's steps faltered. Her heart stumbled against her ribs. She lowered her gaze quickly, but Lakota's voice carried after her. Ayana. Her name and his voice sounded different, full, steady, as though he spoke it not out of habit, but with weight, with intention. She turned slowly. Yes? Her voice was barely more than a whisper. Lakota stepped closer, though not so close as to draw the crowd's stares. His presence was grounding, like the steady rhythm of a drum. Do not let your father's words bind you, he said. I spoke not from anger, but from truth. What I see in you is not burden. Her breath caught. She opened her mouth, but nothing came. Lakota's gaze softened. I meant what I said. If he casts you aside, if he refuses to see, then know this. I see you. And if you choose it, you belong with me. Not for a moment. Not for pity. Forever. The weight of forever, the word again. Forever. Ayana's knees weakened. She clutched the vessel tighter to steady herself, her heart a wild bird against its cage. No one has ever spoken to me like this, she whispered, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Then they have all been blind. Lakota replied simply. She looked up at him, truly looked, and saw no mockery in his eyes. Only steadiness, as if he were a river and she could step into it without fear of drowning. But still, Doubt clung to her. You do not know me. Not fully. Perhaps you see only a shadow, not what is real. Takota's lips curved, not in laughter, but in a quiet certainty. I see enough, and what I see tells me there is more strength in you than even you know. Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe. She wanted to step into those words and let them become her truth. But her father's shadow loomed still. Her father's fury that evening, her father returned to the lodge in a storm of temper. Word of Takota's vow had spread far, and his pride had been wounded before the entire gathering. You! He barked at Ayanna, his finger stabbing toward her. Do you think yourself precious now? Do you think one man's foolish words make you worth something? Ayanna flinched. I did not. Silence, he roared. You shame me. You shame this lodge. You are nothing, and no warrior's whisper will change it. Her brothers shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between their father's rage and Ayanna's trembling form. None spoke. None defended her. Her father's voice cut again. You will stay where you belong in this lodge, under my word. Do you hear me? The chains wrapped tighter. For a moment, Ayanna felt the old weight pressed down, the years of humiliation, the silence, the helplessness. But then she remembered Takota's voice. Do not let your father's words bind you. I see you. Forever. The words sparked like fire inside her, small but real. For the first time, her father's fury did not crush her entirely. Ayanna's first defiance, she lifted her head. Not much, just slightly. But enough. Her father's eyes narrowed. What is that look? Ayanna swallowed hard, her heart thundering. Her lips trembled, but she forced the words through them. I hear you, she said softly, but I also hear another voice. Silence fell. Her brothers stared. Her father's face twisted with shock, then rage. Another voice? Ayanna's hands clenched at her sides. She did not dare speak Takota's name, not yet. But the defiance was already there, fragile but unbreakable. Yes, she whispered. Another voice. The whisper that lingered that night, after her father had stormed out in fury. Ayanna sat alone by the fire. The flames flickered low, but they felt different now, stronger, as if the fire itself knew her secret, that the whisper of claim had taken root in her heart. She pressed her palms together and breathed deeply. For the first time, she prayed not to be smaller, not to disappear. She prayed to be strong enough to walk into forever. Takota's vigil outside. Beneath the stars, Takota kept watch near the edge of the circle. He knew her father's anger would not fade easily. He knew Ayanna would suffer more before peace could come, but he had spoken his vow, and he would not take it back. Whether she stepped toward him tomorrow, or a season from now, or many winters hence, he would wait. For some promises are not measured in days. They are measured in forever. The final morning of the gathering dawned soft and golden, the sky painted with streaks of pink and orange. The drums that had pounded through the days fell silent now, their echoes fading into memory. People packed their goods, prepared their horses, spoke farewells. The season of unity was ending, and each family would return to its own hunting grounds. For Ayanna, the air felt heavier than ever. Each passing moment tightened the knot in her chest. She knew that when the gathering ended, the chance for change might vanish with it. Takota would ride back to his people. Her father would keep her chained to silence. And she would return to her life of whispers spoken only to herself, unless. The weight of decision the night before, her father's rage had shaken the lodge like thunder. His words still rang in her ears, sharp and cruel. Yet beneath the cruelty, something had shifted. For the first time, she had answered him not with equal fire, but with a refusal to be crushed. I hear another voice. Those words had been small, trembling, fragile. But they had been hers. And she had seen the way her father had stumbled back, startled not by their volume but by their existence. All her life she had been silent, Now, even a whisper of defiance carried power, but whispers alone could not change her fate. Her heart returned again and again to Dakota's words. If you choose it, you belong with me. Forever. The choice was hers. And choice, she realized, was something she had never truly claimed before. The elders' council by mid-morning, the elders gathered in the circle to give their blessings and words of guidance before the tribes dispersed. Families stood together, warriors behind their chiefs, children tugging at mothers' hands. Ayanna stood in the shadow of her father, her shawl pulled tightly around her. Her brothers shifted restlessly, their eyes eager for the journey home. The elders spoke of harmony, of respect, of the Great Spirit watching the steps of all who walked upon the earth. Their words were calm, timeless, steady as the flow of a river. And then, as if carried by that river itself, Dakota stepped forward. Dakota's declaration. "I ask for a voice," he said. His tone was not loud, but it carried, pulling every ear toward him. The elders nodded, granting him space to speak. He turned, not to the crowd, not to the chiefs, but directly toward Ayanna's father. "You call her burden," he said, "but I call her strength. You say she is worthless, but I say she carries worth greater than you will ever admit. You hold her down with chains of words, yet she rises still. And I tell you now, if you cast her away, she belongs with me, forever." The circle stirred, voices rising in surprise. Some murmured approval, others frowned at the challenge. Ayanna's heart thundered in her chest. Her father's face darkened, fury burning like fire. "You dare speak this again, before all?" Dakota's eyes did not waver. "I do, and I will not unsay it." The moment of choice silence fell, heavy and expectant. All eyes turned to Ayanna. Her hands trembled. Her breath came shallow. For so long she had been the one overlooked, silenced, diminished. Now the entire circle waited for her voice. Her father's glare bore down on her, sharp as the edge of a blade. She felt the old weight pressing, threatening to crush her back into silence. But then she remembered the children's laughter when she told them stories. The way the elders' hands had rested on hers in thanks for her care. The hawk circling overhead that winter, reminding her to lift her eyes. And Dakota's whisper, "I see you." Forever. Her fear loosened. Piece by piece, she lifted her head. Her voice shook, but it carried. "I am not a burden." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Her father's mouth twisted. "What did you say?" Ayanna swallowed hard, forcing the next words past the knot in her throat. "I am not a burden," she repeated, stronger this time. "I am my mother's daughter. I am a keeper of stories, a healer of small wounds, a hand for children, a fire for the old. I am not nothing. I am not your shame." Her chest heaved, her whole body trembling. But the silence that followed was not empty. It was full of her voice, full of her truth. Belonging to Dakota stepped forward then, slow and steady, his gaze never leaving hers. He extended his hand, not in command, not in demand, but in offering. "If you will walk with me," he said, his voice quiet but unshakable, "then let it be by your choice. Not mine. Not your father's, yours, forever." Ayanna looked at his hand, then at her father's glare. The old fear clawed at her, desperate to pull her back. But the new strength rose higher, brighter. She stepped forward. And placed her hand in Dakota's. The uproar of the circle erupted. Some cried out in shock, others in approval. The elders raised their hands for calm. But the noise swelled like waves against the shore. Her father roared, his voice breaking with fury. "You shame me. You betray your blood." Ayanna turned to him, her hand still in Dakota's. Her heart pounded, but her words came clear. "No, I honor myself. And if you will not see me, then I will walk where I am seen." The blow she feared never came. Her father's fury collapsed into silence, his face hard as stone. He turned away, his pride shattered before all Dot, and in that turning, Ayanna felt the chains fall away. A new life when the gathering ended. Ayanna did not walk back to her father's lodge. She walked beside Lakota, her steps trembling but free. Her heart ached with fear and with hope, with grief for what she left and with wonder for what she chose. But most of all, it ached with the strength of belonging, not because she was claimed, but because she had chosen to claim herself. Lakota's presence was steady beside her. He did not speak much, only once whispering, "You are braver than you know." And for the first time, Ayanna believed it. The forever seasons would pass. Ayanna would learn new ways of strength caring not only for fires and children, but for herself. She would walk beside Lakota, not behind him, her voice growing stronger with every word spoken. Her father's shadow would linger, but it would no longer bind her. For she had stepped into forever, not the forever of chains, but the forever of choice, of love freely given, of worth finally recognized. And whenever doubt threatened, she would remember the whisper that had broken her silence, the words that had carried her from burden to belonging. Then she belongs with me, forever.